see this everywhere you go. But if you're not that familiar with the term dropshipping, you may think the whole thing is a scam, and I just don't think it deserves the bad rap sometimes it gets. Are you a product-based business, maybe handmade or importing? I do both. I'm spending my own cash advertising on Facebook and Instagram to help grow my 2 Shopify stores from scratch that I started in 2020. So join me in this diary type podcast where I share real-time challenges and wins as things happen day to day in real time, because we often feel less alone in our e-commerce journey when sharing the challenges with someone else. If you're just starting out or growing your small online business, I think you'll find my experiences motivational as I share from my kitchen table in Adelaide, Australia. Brought to you by one of my e-commerce shops, theturtlejournal.com.au. Welcome to Aussie E-commerce Mum a Diary. This is episode number 26 about dropshipping and how it's changed over the years. What is dropshipping? This is a very common term and it's really trendy in the last couple of years for sure. I want to talk a little bit about dropshipping, the concept and the model, and it's probably more common than you think. If you are familiar with dropshipping, you will absolutely see this everywhere you go. But if you're not that familiar with the term dropshipping, you may think the whole thing is a scam, and I just don't think it deserves the bad rap sometimes it gets. Because like I said, I think it's more around us than what we realize. You know, I bought my family and we bought a couch recently as in like 3 months ago. We bought it from Amart. It was technically in stock. It was one of their popular couches in their most popular color. So they said, it's going to be about 4 weeks. No worries. Then we got a text and a phone call saying it's now going to be 8 weeks. And it was at that moment I thought, I reckon this couch is drop shipped. In other words, I bet you it's not even in the country when we purchased it, and they're now waiting for it to arrive in the country, because there's no way if it was sitting in Sydney or Melbourne, it was going to take 8 weeks to get to me in Adelaide. So drop shipping is a business model, and it's pretty cool actually, because it means that the customer purchases a product before the supplier orders it from their manufacturer. In other words, I sell products, I sell them to customers. A customer will pay me for something, but it's only once the customer has paid me initially, I then go to my supplier and place the order with my supplier, who then sends it directly to my customer. When you think about it like that, that is essentially the framework for dropshipping. It's quite genius, really. The very low cost starting a business if you dropship, because me who starts the business doesn't have to order tens of thousands of dollars of stock from a supplier upfront first, to then have it, to trial it, to see how it goes, to store it, and have the money sitting there out of pocket. I get to just start the business and try things out, and then see if I can sell to customers, see if customers love it, see what the market out there is or who wants my product. They purchase from me. Then I go and buy that unit from the manufacturer or my supplier, and my supplier sends it directly to the customer. That's actually why I really like it. I think niche websites or small niche websites do really well with dropshipping, because you can try things quickly, you can test different products, you can test different niches, different collections, just to see what your customers love without wasting a lot of money up front, which is actually I really like dropshipping. I listened to a really interesting podcast in very late 2020 about 2 Aussie teenagers who started an online jigsaw website in early 2020. As soon as they saw the pandemic start, they created a Shopify website overnight. They stayed up all night, created a website, started selling straight away, and they had a couple of suppliers lined up. So they were selling within 2 days. And then as they sold jigsaws, they then would go and place the order with their manufacturer, who would then send the product straight to the customer. It's quite genius, really. With a dropshipping model, really the burden on the business owner is to market, because you're not holding stock, you're not packaging stock, you're not shipping stock. Your skill needs to be in the marketing, which is why I see a lot of dropshipping gurus and, real real idiots online often actually that talk about all this crazy stupid stuff with I made $10,000 in my sleep and all that really off-putting macho stuff. They talk a lot about it because it relies heavily on social media and paid traffic to succeed, because you need to find thousands of people fast, and that's where the skill lies in the marketing and the paid traffic world. So that's sort of what dropshipping is, and the reasons why I quite like it, but also some of the icky sides of it where it really does have a real nasty kind of side to it. Just not a great persona. It comes across a little shifty, but it doesn't have to be shifty. In fact, I think since Apple made its privacy changes in 2021, I actually think dropshipping has become much more legitimate because there's less shady advertisers on the platform. Facebook and Instagram advertising now more than ever is much more regular marketing, like wholesome, and like you build relationships with your customers and connections with your customers, and less kind of throwing up a Shopify website overnight with no email address, no phone number, no credibility, and then selling on social media and then disappearing again in 2 months' time. So I actually think Apple has been good for that with Facebook and Instagram advertising, even more now so than back in 2020. I actually think dropshipping is a legitimate model for starting out and starting a business and trying out different things and seeing what you like and what the market likes. So times has changed with dropshipping. It has changed a lot for sure, but I do still think it's a pretty cool business model. I really do, even though it does get a bad rap. And maybe to grow organically now with dropshipping as a business model, you need to rely much more on platforms like TikTok, which is, far out of my reach, not at all my platform whatsoever. But I wonder if that's how people who dropship, in 2022 or 2023 succeed or find success organically, would be through platforms like TikTok or maybe YouTube. I don't know that it's a long-term solution. I don't think it's a great long-term solution for building a business, because you really are at the mercy of your supplier. You don't have the stock on hand. You're not sort of got control over it, which is why I've talked about in one of my episodes. I started drop shipping with both of my websites actually, but then changed after a few months when I saw some traction, because I wanted more control over the brand and more control over the customer experience. And you don't get that with drop shipping. So I don't reckon it's a great long-term business model, but I do still think it's a pretty cool way to start out. And do you know some people drop ship on eBay or dropship on Amazon? That is hugely common. If you're in that world, the e-commerce world, it's actually way more common than I realized until I started looking into it. Is that some people even dropship a private brand on eBay. In other words, let's say you own a big online pet brand in Australia. I'm thinking of one in particular, and you buy your dog food and cat food from there yourself as a customer, and you think, I wonder if I could make some money out of this. I'll put some items on eBay with a small markup, and I'll sell them with the pictures from the brand, not my own pictures, but I'll increase the price a bit, because people on eBay often don't price check. They actually just assume the price is the cheapest, and it's often not. But that's what sellers bank on, is that if you're on eBay, you just assume it's the cheapest price, and you often don't go check other websites because you're on eBay. That's where you want to shop. So I decide, I'll mark them up a little bit, and then somebody buys something from me on eBay. So then I go and place an online order through the supplier's website, but put my customer's details in there. So they ship it straight to my customer, not realizing that I was the middleman in between, and made some money out of it. How sneaky is that? It actually happens more often than you think it does. Well, maybe you think it happens a lot, in which case you'd probably be correct. The same thing happens on Amazon. There's a lot of Amazon suppliers and sellers who get their stock from eBay. They sell it through Amazon, but they don't have it sitting at their house, and Amazon hasn't got it sitting at their warehouse either. It's actually with the seller from eBay, and it's only when someone on Amazon buys a particular product that the seller on Amazon will then go purchase it personally from eBay and put the shipping details in of the customer from Amazon, and then the eBay seller sends it straight to the customer. I wonder if I got that right. That was a lot of detail. That was a bit of a crazy circle there. I feel like I explained that correctly. The point is, there's a lot of middlemen involved who all take a tiny cut. It's kind of That's kind of a different way dropshipping works as well, and maybe in ways you've never realized before. But like I said, I started out dropshipping and then changed after a few months when I saw some traction with my business, with interest from customers, and I wanted more control over my brand. I wanted a more legitimate business. I wanted to have proper suppliers that I purchased from, and I had my own stock sitting here at home that I have control over. Plus, the margins are very small with dropshipping naturally because you're relying heavily on marketing, often through Facebook and Instagram advertising. The margins are often a lot smaller than holding your own stock. So, in conclusion, I would say that I do still think dropshipping is an interesting model to start out with. But if you're looking at information online, which I've seen heaps of recently, and if you're in the e-commerce world too, you probably see it too, I do think it's like vitally important to check the date of the time and the time in history that sort of gurus and people are spruiking the, I made $10 in my, $10,000 in my sleep crap. When it is this happened, because often the revenue they're spruiking and their success is all built on a very small window of time, which is probably through the pandemic, before the iOS updates and changes, which was a time when honestly you could advertise on Facebook and Instagram, and if you didn't get sales within hours, then you would decide to turn those ads off and start new ones. Like, it was just an insane time for e-commerce. If you're interested in someone online talking about the success they've had with dropshipping and all the money they've made and really quickly overnight, blah, 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 just make sure you do your due diligence really and check who they are, what's the motive behind what they're saying. Are they trying to sell you something? But also, what time of history are they talking about? The revenue they're talking about, did they make it last week? Did they make it a year ago? Did they make it 2 years ago? Because those times are all very different. I think anything before August 2021, I disregard as far as anything to do with Facebook and Instagram advertising. A lot of the tactics are just irrelevant. Now, they really are, since Apple did its privacy update. So just sort of make sure you really look into it. And plus too, of course, you never know when someone's, raving about their revenue, what the profit actually is. That's so key. Like, I can make 50 grand revenue on Facebook and Instagram with advertising on my Shopify stores. I know I can, but I might also go broke in the process because it might cost me, 40 grand in advertising spend to make 50 grand in revenue. And then I've got the cost of my products, and that all equals, I'm like in the whole tens of thousands of dollars. So it's always a big picture. You always need to look at the whole big picture. And I guess I'm particularly pushing that point because when you do see drop shipping spruiked online, it really is really shady. It comes across so shady. It really does. So it's more susceptible, I think, to people getting sucked into it or believing kind of these crazy numbers that are just a gamble. But if you strip all of that away and look at it objectively and look around you in the world of where you shop and see how common it actually is in the everyday world, I think there's a legitimate model there for sure. And I do love the way you can start a business with dropshipping and test things and try things and see how you go, to see what the market bears and to see what your customers love and what they don't love. But it's just important to always, take people's advice sensibly and critically and put your critical thinking hat on and consider why they're saying it, when did they say it, when did they make this money, how much did it cost them to advertise to make that revenue, and what their motives might be. So that's my sort of thoughts about it. I just really wanted to make this episode because it does get a bad rap, I think, dropshipping as a model. And a lot of that's valid, and this episode's certainly not saying that's not valid. A lot of it is valid. But some of it too probably isn't valid, and there actually are some pretty cool things about it that I quite like and I think are really cool if you're starting out or thinking to start out. So as always, I would always encourage to have a growth mindset, to experiment, to collect your own data, to make your own, mistakes and your own learnings and your own successes along the way. And you can make up your own judgment about it one way or the other. So that's my sort of advice, and that's why I wanted to speak a bit about this topic, because it's pretty common. I see it on social media a lot, and I seem to see a lot more of it recently too in the last few months than I have for probably a year or two, it's a bit interesting. So anyway, if you're a fan of dropshipping or not a fan of dropshipping, I hope this has been a bit interesting for you, and maybe giving you some things to think about, or just a different way of maybe looking at it on a good way or a bad way. So thanks so much for joining me. I hope my Diary Style podcast has been a bit of encouragement for you if we spent this time together in sharing some real-time challenges and wins of growing a product business. So head to my website where you can see my episodes and send me an email, because I'd love to hear from you and hear what you're up to and what you sell, and if you've got a business of your own or thinking about it, or how long you've been in business for. I'd love to hear from you. It'd be really cool. My website's aussieecommercemum.com.au. And I'll see you next time. As always, keep learning.